is really relevant stuff in retail today. What I'm going to talk about is, I hate to say it's tactical, it's maybe a little more strategic. When you're thinking about innovation in retail, how to implement innovation in general, kind of like Ron just mentioned, a lot of this can be generalized across industry. I've been working in retail for a long time, so for me, I'm bringing kind of the retail lens onto it. And I think innovation in retail is extremely relevant. I've been saying that for a couple of years now. And, really when you look at probably over the last 20 years, innovation is nothing new. People have been innovating since people have been people. It's kind of what we do. We like inventing things, creating new stuff. With the boom in technology, all of the compute power in the cloud, AI algorithms becoming more open source, all of this data available for us to crunch in it, the Internet of Things, lots and lots of these topics that we're covering today. Really over the last couple decades, we've seen a major shift in a lot of the companies that we thought were the leaders in retail. If you think about, I grew up, not to date myself too much, but as a kid, I would thumb through the Sears catalog to figure out what I want for Christmas. Sears is not so relevant, anymore today. Kids are not looking through the Sears catalog for their Christmas presents anymore. So in essentially a generation, how people interact with retailers, how people go about retail has completely changed. And so when we think about innovation, this quote that I'm showing is really kind of one of my favorites because, I'm not just thinking about kind of just standard operating procedure, how are we making things better? How are you changing the game? How are you keeping your business alive? How are you really staying on the edge in this 21st century? And, if you look at kind of what's happened with COVID, as Shanti was mentioning, that accelerated lots of what we call innovation. I always like to take a step back and think about, what is innovation? When we're talking about innovation, what is it just new, cool technology? Because if that's your definition, then maybe it doesn't always apply to you and your role and what you're doing. Is it running R&D? Well, that could be a part of it. And there are lots of people who are squarely in R&D who are very innovative, doing innovative things. When I'm thinking about innovation, I like to look at this broader picture of invention and exploitation. So you're not just creating ideas, but it's that whole commercialization process. How are you coming up with ideas? How are you growing them? How are you commercializing them? And then finally, how do you actually realize value from all of that work? Because it takes a lot to get through those first three boxes. And so I'm going to, throughout my presentation, reference these as boxes 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when you hear me later saying stuff about box 4, I'm talking about how you're realizing innovation, really how your business is growing from it and the benefits that you're getting out of it. Same with, box 1 and 2, for example. So I think whenever you're thinking about innovation, how are you going to innovate? Where do you want to be? How are you going to move your business forward? I think first you just have to come to terms with what box you want to play in. And, when you look at kind of these 4 key parts of innovation, I think a lot of us, most companies are going to be further to the right on innovation realization. And really in that kind of mode, others are inventing stuff, you're exploiting it. Even within large companies that have massive, that have large investments in R&D, or that are doing lots of kind of invention type work, and maybe, what they call an ambidextrous type organization, where you maybe have kind of one organization looking to the future and trying out new things, another part of the organization that's, making sure that you're getting value out of those, / keeping the lights on, / running the business and everything else. I have seen lots of people that just live in box 4. Let's face reality. R&D is super expensive and it fails most of the time. And that's normal science. You try stuff, you fail, you try again. That costs a lot of money. And and just being realistic, not everyone can invest that much over time to just to be inventive. And I think, pre-COVID, we saw a lot more people not doing innovation because they're closer to the box four. They're not investing in the R&D up in 1 and 2. But around box 4, there's so many different options, so many different types of technology. It's evolving so fast. It's difficult to say, all right, well, what are we going to invest in? What are we going to move forward with? And then I think COVID was the forcing function to say, okay, well, people's behavior has changed. Here's what they're doing now. You need to change your model to meet your customers where they are. So that's kind of a lot of companies that are touching customers. But then you have kind of this box 1 through 3, where these are your inventors, these are your startups, these are your vendors. They're the ones coming up with cool ideas, building them, commercializing them, and then oftentimes companies can just realize that, harness that, hire those companies, work with them, etc. And when I'm thinking about strategies and innovation, and of course I work for Microsoft, I love doing what I do. It's so much fun, getting to work with companies in retail innovation. I absolutely love it. Why Microsoft in this space? Depending too on your point of view from which box you're looking from. If you're in that box 4 where you're like, man, look, I'm trying to get R&D set up, or I haven't set it up, or R&D is moving at its pace. They're maybe only working on things that are the most strategic initiatives for your business, which makes sense. That's really what they should be doing. But you need to add these new capabilities and realize this new type of innovation. We have an extensive partner network of awesome companies that specialize in. There goes my room. Hang on one second. All right. And a lot of them are on this call today. Being able to bring kind of our partner network to say, hey, like Neil Analytics has some amazing IoT solutions, or Blue Yonder in supply chain, Adobe. Being able to plug them in and realize that innovation from all of their work that they've done is, I think, extremely valuable. Microsoft basically is, we are box 1, 2, and 3. We live in those worlds. We have our own products that we're building. We've got our own R&D research organizations. But then if you think about, you're running your own R&D, you are working on kind of what is the future of your industry, what's the future of your business, besides adding new capabilities and kind of trying to exploit them immediately, where are you going into the future? For that, I think sometimes we need to take a step back and think, how are our innovation teams working? How efficient are they being? Being that innovation is a science, and that you are going to fail, you're going to have terrible ideas, and that's okay. In fact, that's what you want. You want more of that. You want to generate more ideas so you can innovate more. You have to think about how you're measuring innovation. How are you capturing all of the input that goes into it? How are you capturing the outputs? And how are you really looking at that impact that you're making all the way across kind of your value chain? And when I look at something like that, I can't help to bring up, this seems completely un-retail, but I think we've found as people have shifted towards working from home, that this is actually very retail. In fact, it's many companies have to worry about, how you're managing your workforce now. How are people working together to innovate? Because I think when COVID hit, one of the big things that we started hearing from customers was, I can't sit next to people, and this is especially people in innovation, like, well, I have to sit next to someone. That's how we generate ideas. If I'm not in my lab, how am I supposed to test this stuff out? And if you're doing something like building robots or something like that, it's hard to bring that stuff home and do it in your home office. But as far as collaborating with your team, as far as trying to bring people closer digitally, we have so many great tools at Microsoft to help with that. Teams, GitHub, all of the M365. For me, when you're thinking about how you're measuring this process, all of the stuff that goes into innovation, all of the stuff that comes out of it, I always go back to, my shameless self-promotion, my book that I wrote a couple years ago, which was really all about, how are you measuring your team? And, and it's not about giving people measurements. You can measure anything, you can measure anything at all. It's really kind of what you do with that data to make sure that you're staying focused and as efficient as possible. to make your innovative teams as effective as possible. And so you can think about all of the tools that we have are also very open tools, where you can use those to help close that communication gap, then also really look at how you're performing across the board so you can continue to hone that and tweak it and make it better and better over time, which ultimately improves your innovative capabilities. And from a Microsoft perspective, we absolutely love, I think Shante had some of this stuff on her slides. I've got a few too in my slides. We love working with customers to innovate. Like, the 4 boxes, we're in box 1, 2, 3. So for us, we want to be able to work as much as we can in those boxes to make you in box 4 as successful as possible. And I think one way to think about technology, and there's a bunch of different frameworks to think about innovation. One we have been kicking around a ton this year has been 3 horizons. Now, this is an old version of it, actually. The one on my screen right now, this is an old version of 3 horizons. And here's why it's old, because it's time bound. If you look at the 3 horizons, you kind of, your first is like, what's in front of you right now? What do you need to do to make your business run faster, more efficient, tighter, more cost effective, all that? I think before Agile, thinking about being able to deliver technology as fast as we can, all of the different things that you can do with technology today, building on the cloud, there was this thought of, the second and third horizon are far out. Now, I think the way we like to think about the 3 horizons and the 3 horizon framework is really kind of from this operational, innovative, transformational perspective. So, your operationals, of course, really, really key. And this goes to how are you running your business while you're innovating at the same time. And I'm going to talk more about this in a sec as well. The second horizon is, all right, so the market is moving extremely fast. Things are evolving. How are you going to stay relevant without completely just dying off? And then finally, the horizon 3 is that's really your key, like what do you want to do to really kind of be a leader in your industry? What are you going to do to kind of redefine the stuff that you're working on? And those are transformational type activities that you want to be able to plan for and think, how can you get your business to those? One way at Microsoft that we like to work with our customers is by going through and building this horizon-based transformation together and really working at with all of the technology that we have and all the capabilities that we can bring from Office to the cloud to all of our partners, all the different ways we can help. How do you get to transformational? You get there first by tightening the operational, becoming more innovative, and then finally you'll start recognizing these transformational capabilities. And it starts with people. Ron mentioned I'm here in beautiful Portland, Oregon. There's no anarchists outside today. We're right. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking to myself on these webcasts, but this company Culture Spark, they're here in Portland also, and I like to use kind of their framework to kind of talk through it. When you're thinking about putting innovation together and really trying to implement this in your company, it really does start with your people. It starts with your culture, and you really need to think, what kind of environment do you want to foster to get the most out of your investments in innovation? First of all, I think more and more research is showing that people don't just go to work anymore. Current generations are going to work and they want to work for companies that have a purpose, that means something. They don't want to just go work for someone that's there purely to make money or do stuff that they're not aligned with from that they're not really aligned with from kind of how they feel their views of the world. So you want to think about, what does your organization stand for? What's your culture? You want to make sure that you have the right culture in place to be able to present innovation, to get to exploit innovation. And then a big part of it also is going to rethinking your working model while you're at this. You see automation design is on here because, when you think about robotic process automation, RPA, all the other tools that are out there that can help your workers become more efficient. And I think a lot of the benefits that we're seeing from artificial intelligence in the workplace isn't from artificial intelligence alone. It's from artificial intelligence that's working with people, enhancing people, and taking away monotonous or tedious tasks to allow them to focus on more important, more strategic work, more human work, which ultimately is going to translate to your company being more innovative. And so this automation as part of your kind of your cultural ethos is important to think about. How are you communicating that across your company in a safe way? How are you empowering people with automation and the tools to allow them to really run and harness their creativity to be more innovative? And another part of this that I always like to focus on is data. There's so much data out there. It blows my mind. I was looking at something the other day where the stuff that people can tell about you with public data that's out there is a little bit mind-blowing. When you take a step back and look at it, all of the transactions that you do in retail and the places you go, the data your phone collects when you're out there, your internet, all these things, you can learn a lot about people with public data or data that you can access. But everyone's going to have access to that data. So, how strategic is that? If you're thinking about innovation, you want to think, what is your data? What is it that makes you unique? And what is the data that you have about your customers that can really help you serve them better and really kind of break through to that next level? And it's, once you have that culture in place and you're getting your people to be more efficient through automation and modern tooling, you can really start creating a more of a data-driven culture and think what is it that we can collect, or what do we have that we can use to really add more value and be more innovative. And then finally, once you have all that, you can put it in place, and you have this concept of this innovation loop, where this is like a nice looking roadmap, but really, once you have those first couple boxes in place, then you really start to run and find efficiencies. You're able to put a lot of these programs in place, become more efficient. So that was a lot about kind of theoretically, when you're thinking about putting innovation in place, some things that you're going to want to think of, some things that you want to make sure is at the front of your mind. In these COVID times, we saw lots of people being extremely reactive, and I think everyone on this call can probably agree. You want to be proactive out there with your business, especially when it comes to innovation. If you're being reactive, how innovative are you really being? So a few kind of interesting partners and a few interesting stories from our side I wanted to talk about as far as innovation goes and co-innovation. First is, so this slide looks different than the other ones because there's a beautiful beach in Portugal in the background. Well, I can't travel right now, so we can't go there, but this lab, so this is a laboratory. If you go back to your boxes, they're squarely in box 1 and 2. And they're in Portugal, their whole purpose is to innovate in the retail space. And they do it, really by partnering with companies that want to innovate, that want to be able to put this in place, but maybe either, one, they want to augment their current R&D, or two, maybe they don't have that capability, they want to start growing it, so they'll partner with this lab of doctors, or, doctors of philosophy, of course, that work with artificial intelligence and all kinds of really, really interesting use cases. So you think about partnering with Microsoft, bringing innovation forward. You have this is another way that we can facilitate to help make something like that happen to help you be more innovative and really kind of focus on innovation. And finally, I wanted to bring up a few interesting use cases. I think the only one here I overlap on with Shanti is the supply chain blockchain supply chain use case with Starbucks, which was definitely fun and cool. It's a couple of years in the making, but when we started, blockchain was one of those things everyone was talking about and nobody really knew what to do with. But when we really took a step back to understand, look, this is technology that from a Microsoft perspective, we've got it down. It works really well. We've got it working. We've got teams of people that can make this work. Hadn't been really commercialized yet. So being able to partner with Starbucks on a real business use case to add better traceability into the supply chain visibility, this is pretty groundbreaking, interesting stuff. And then I think each of these represents a different type of interesting technology. Keeping moving on from right to left, mixed reality, augmented reality. Thinking about customer service and shopping. How are you really utilizing this? I think augmented reality is something a lot of people still struggle with on how to implement it because maybe it just doesn't fit into your business model. But that's exactly where leveraging automation to free up some of your workforce to be more creative really helps, because I think all of the most amazing use cases, especially with mixed reality, have been extremely creative, out of the box thinking. It's just a new type of media, which that you kind of have to think differently about. And the smart windows, smart mirrors, those are fun and cool to play with. I feel like I see those at lots of retail shows, when we still go to retail shows, but at the time when they came out, these were really innovative and interesting. And then finally, and this is one that we love to talk about, was our partnership with Kroger, where they have an extensive R&D capability. They actually spun out a small company with artificial intelligence in cameras, using not only remote in IoT enabled cameras, but then also digital shelves that can sync with that in the customer for really, really amazing experience. And again, it's one of those things where it's a lot of investment to get going, but now they're really realizing a lot of that. Not just realizing it from themselves, but they've been able to commercialize and then repackage and resell this technology as another company. So thinking about, as Shanti was mentioning, what kind of new business models can you go into with your current focus? How does your culture translate to that? What does the data that you have for your customers really say about that? And how can it help you transform? So, that's pretty much it for me. I think I'm just about out of time anyway. So, just a quick summary. Understand the boxes. Where are you? Which box do you live in? And, just remember, when you're thinking about innovation, that perspective is going to kind of be the lens that you are looking through when you're implementing this and realizing value. You need to make sure that you have a solid culture in place to make this sustainable. You can go out and buy stuff off the shelf and put it in. It's going to make a difference. That's awesome. Yes. But at the same time, if you can't sustain this, it's going to fall flat over time. So you really need to think, how am I going to change my business? While we have to be innovative to just survive in this world, how can we really use this as an opportunity to transform and become more innovative moving forward? And then, finally, hey, your partners are going to help you scale. And I think we see that a ton at Microsoft. We love all of our partners. I feel like there's so many awesome companies doing such cool things out there right now. And of course, Microsoft, we love partnering with companies. There's normal stuff that we do. There's kind of stuff that I find boring in my day job. The most exciting, the most fun stuff, the stuff we love to do the most is really working with you to be more innovative and to scale that innovation and to see that value. So having said that, thank you very much, everybody. It's been fun.